Today's program was made possible by the generous prayer and support of the faithful friends and partners of this ministry. Visit our new website at sheila.media.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sheila Zilinsky Show for this October 5th, 2018 edition. As I promised you a few days ago, I have a very powerful guest on today. He's quite an extraordinary young man. He's been invited on 100 Huntley Street and other Christian programs to talk about his very powerful testimony. And I think many young people are going to be so blessed by this. And I would really encourage people to share this with your youth because it's a powerful show. I met him recently, and again, I was so impressed by his testimony, I invited him to come and share it on the program. It is my pleasure to introduce just an incredible evangelist who hails out of Kelowna, BC, Canada. He's right in my neck of the woods. What an absolute privilege to have him on the program. I think God is really doing some amazing stuff in his life. Cody Bates, welcome to the program today. It is such an honor to have you on the show.
It's so good to be on the show. I'm very excited. Super excited to talk to you. And excited for other people to be encouraged by what God has done in my life. It's pretty cool.
Well, it's pretty cool, and you're a pretty cool guy. And I think you're going to really impact the youth across our globe. Really, I think I was so moved by your testimony. So I'm going to hand you the mic and you shoot it back to me when you're ready. Please do share your very powerful testimony with the folks.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so I guess I'll start at the beginning. I grew up in Calgary, Alberta. By the age of 4 years old, I called 3 different men in my life dad. Yeah, at a very early age, I just kind of got the idea in my head that loving someone was dangerous, and if you did it, you're going to get hurt. The only way I could really bond with my mom is by hating the guys that were coming in and out of my life. So that relationship took a really sick turn as well. My mom started abusing me when I was really young. That kind of transitioned into different forms of delinquency. So I think at about 7 years old, I got put on Ritalin and Dexedrine to kind of handle so they could adjust my behavior. And then what happened there is because I was on these meds, I wasn't able to be myself when I was at school, and that created separation in between myself and my peers. So when I was at school, I started getting bullied. When I'd go home, I was getting abused. I didn't know God when I was young, but I prayed every single day that I would disappear. I was just absolutely crushed on the inside. I hated every inch of myself. And to try and get what little control I could get out of my life, I started killing animals when I was about 9 years old. And I don't know what it was, but it was just the lack of control in my life, and I just hated myself so much, and I wanted something to pay for what was happening to me, for how I felt about myself, so I was just very, very demented, very sick when I was very young. At 12 years old, I got my first joint out of my mom's cigarette pack. I remember walking to school and smoking this joint, and my plan with these drugs was I was going to be the cool kid on the playground for once. People are going to know I was high, and I was going to be sweet. People are going to think I was cool. And I remember smoking this joint, and I got way more than I bargained for because I didn't care what anybody thought of me. I didn't care who knew I was high or who didn't know I was high or who thought I was cool or what girls liked me. For the first time in my life, this melon that had grown in my gut was gone. And I decided in that moment that I was going to chase that for the rest of my life. And I did. I started going to prison when I was around 15 years old, and that lasted for years. When I was in jail, I met guys in there that were gang members, and these guys treated me good. I remember being in prison and just for the first time in my life actually connecting with people my own age, and it was very perverse love, but it was the first feeling of family I'd really ever had. And, so for the first time since I was 12, I was sober and okay to be in my own skin. So I thought I found the answer. I thought, that I was just going to be, with these guys in a gang and just be good like that, and when I got out of prison, everything that comes along with gang life followed me getting out of prison. I was getting involved in home invasions, robberies, kidnappings, all kinds of stuff. And I just loved being around my friends. I loved being around the girls. I loved being around cocaine. I loved everything that I thought would make me happy. I chased. And then it all kind of came to a head on June 6, 2006. Me and my friend murdered a rival gang member in a drug turf war homicide. And then I ended up getting charged with first-degree murder a year and a half later. And I remember getting charged when I got charged with homicide, my heart just went black. Like I was 22 years old. I was looking at 25 years. I was looking at spending the rest of my life, in a penitentiary.
Wow.
And I just, the amount of darkness that swelled inside me just swelled even bigger. And I embraced the darkness is the best way I can put it. Everything I did, I was so angry at my life. I was so angry at everybody, and I acted it out in acts of violence. And I did the only thing that I knew how to do, and that's try and connect with gang members. And every time I went into a cell with someone, it was always coupled with a massive statement that I wanted to move up within the ranks of the gang. Within 6 months, I was the highest ranking member in that institution. We went to war with one of the largest prison gangs in Alberta, so it was a 24/7, gladiator school and knife fight. And at 6 months in, I was the highest ranking member in the institution, and I found myself with a supermax security classification. It was, belly shackle treatment. You go to, you're separated from everyone else. It's solitary confinement, administrative SAG, special handling unit. There's lots of names for it, but it was just, in a really perverse sense, I thought I'd arrived. I was sitting in a cell by myself. I was 23-hour lockdown. I was supermax. I was, and that was, I got everything I asked for, and I was dying inside. I was sitting in there, just the melon in my gut was huge. I got convicted of manslaughter and sent to Edmonton Max Penitentiary. It was 150 inmates, just the worst, most vile, demonic human beings you'll ever meet, the worst of the worst in Western Canada. And again, I just folded into what I thought would make me happy, and that's just hurting people and getting respect and trafficking drugs. And I continued on for quite a while. I remember when I got released from prison, I was straight for a bit while I was on parole, and I got into the car industry, and I ended up selling 240 cars for my first year out of jail. And I was on top of the world. I was making more money, than I'd ever made, legitly. And I was looking at houses on the lake. I was driving a nice car. I was, and the most misleading piece of advice I've ever gotten in my entire life was keep picking up the lunch pail and going to work. I'm telling you, about a year and a half after I got out of prison, I wanted to die every single day. There was just something missing, just this big void. That melon in my gut came back, and it got to a point where I couldn't rationalize why I wasn't doing drugs anymore. It was just, I had money, I had everything that everyone said make me happy didn't satisfy me. It just didn't make sense to me that I was holding out on potential outlets to feel better. So I got back into narcotic trafficking again, and I started building a massive dial-a-dope operation in South Calgary. And when I did that, I would go to bars, parties, networking everywhere I went, and I would build phones is what I would do. As soon as I had 120 people, I'd give them free cocaine and put them on phones. And once I had 120 people on a phone, I would hire 2 shift workers, and they would work that phone, and then I would start another one. And I would go out and meet people, and then once that phone had 120 people, I'd start another one, and then another one, and then another one, and then another one. Thousands of customers with just lots of people working underneath me. Aggressive, stiff-arm tactics to take over the drug trade in South Calgary. I chased everything that I thought would make me happy. That was money, that was power, that was women, that was friends, and that's most of all, that was cocaine. As I dove further and further into that, it just didn't make me happy. I remember being at a point where my habit just progressed to a point where I started doing about $1,500 of cocaine a day, and I was only sleeping every 6 days. My health problems started getting out of control, but I was making money whether I decided to tackle the day or not. It got to a point where, I used to enjoy going to parties and having fun and stuff, and I barely left my house. I would just sit there staring at my surveillance cameras for days on end. I would just sit there staring at these cameras, barely ever leaving my house. My health problems got to a point where, My liver was failing. My heart was failing. I had stomach ulcers, pancreatitis. I was dropping from heart attacks, overdosing. I had to be resuscitated 3 times by ambulance, EMS. Yeah. And I should have died over and over and over and over again. But for some reason, death wouldn't take me. I remember when I got told by doctors that I was going to die and that I didn't have long to live, I was relieved. I remember just thinking like it was finally going to be over soon. It was, that melon in my gut would finally go away. I'd finally die. I tried to kill myself multiple times, and I put needles full of bleach, put it into my arm. I sat in a vehicle with an exhaust tube going in. I was so filled with anger and rage and pain and guilt and shame. I just hated every inch of myself, and there was no way out of it. There was no way to ever get sober. I just didn't see any reason of living anymore. I remember one day I had this girl come over to my house, and she was showing me these paintings on her iPad, and they're painted by a girl named Akiana Kramaric. And this girl, this 7-year-old girl that Jesus taught to paint. And that's the claim anyway. But when I looked at these paintings, they were painted by a 7-year-old. They were like Da Vinci's. And they're phenomenal. I could not deny that she didn't have divine help. She had to. It's the only way she could have done this. And one of her paintings is called The Prince of Peace, and it's a painting of Jesus. And I remember looking into his eyes. And like I said, I was only sleeping every 6 days. I was doing $1,500 of cocaine a day, shooting it, smoking it, and snorting it all at the same time. And I lived in psychosis because of that. Like I was constantly, my mind was just split in half, hardly able to tell reality from the spiritual realm, I would call it. I remember looking into the eyes of this Prince of Peace portrait, and for some reason, just an enormous amount of calm would come over me, even when I was out of my mind. And in that moment, I believed, I'd never been to church, I'd never read the Bible, but I remember looking at this painting and believing that was God, that Jesus was God. But in order for me to have any kind of relationship with him, I would have to get sober. I would have to separate myself from my friends. I would have to quit selling drugs. Me. It would have to be me to do absolutely everything. So, not for 1 second did I think that he could do anything for me. I just thought it was cool that God was real. And I survived for about another 5 months after that. And it was torture. Every single day was just torture. And I remember January 4th, 2017, I woke up that morning knowing that was going to be the last day that I'd ever be living. I remember barely having the energy to go downstairs to get the knife to cut my wrist with. I remember getting a big butcher knife, walking back in my room, closing my door, and sitting on my bed. And I had the conscious thought that was going to be the last time that I was ever standing up. And as I sitting there, just looking around my room, and it was disgusting, just ravaged, and crack pipes sitting around, spoons, baking soda, lighters, beer cans, food, just garbage everywhere. And I just remember looking around the room and just knowing that I couldn't do this anymore. And I started cutting my wrists, and I remember bleeding, and I was thinking about my family. And I remember I wasn't thinking about them to stop me, but because I hurt so much every time I thought of the people I loved, that the devil was just telling me that ultimate lie, that do this for them, do this for the people you love, they deserve that much from you. And I was doing it, and I got the knife, tipping the knife deep into my wrist. And right as I was about to pull it back, all of a sudden, I started feeling things that I've never felt in my entire life. First, that melon that was in my gut for 31 years disappeared like that. I was like, all the treachery, all the pain, all the shame, all the guilt, everything just fell off my shoulders in a split moment. And then all of a sudden I started feeling things I've never felt before. But not just a little bit, but bursting out of me, like joy, benevolence, peace, just warm feelings washing over me. And the words started repeating, it's over, it's over. Your suffering's come to an end. And I have never been to church. I've never read the Bible, but I knew that Jesus Christ was talking to me in that room. And up to that point, I was a convicted killer, gang member. I was a drug dealer. I was a diagnosed sociopath. And he left for 99 to come and save me. My addiction was gone. My shame, my guilt, everything that made me me for 31 years disappeared like that. And I remember getting off the floor, and I put all my phones into a bucket of water. After I did that, I took all my jewelry off. I put that on the ground. When I walked out of that house, I didn't bring anything with me. I wanted nothing to do with that guy's house. And I had no problem doing it. I walked out of that house just being filled with the Holy Spirit. And I ended up going to my dad's house. And I remember being at my dad's house, and just my addiction was gone. But man, did I go through a rough detox. And I hadn't come down in 3 years. Oh man, once the fog cleared, the wreckage I did to my brain was very prevalent. I'd be shivering and shaking under my covers at my dad's house. I could barely leave my room to go to the bathroom. I remember sitting under the covers, shaking, and my dad would come in my room, and I'd just feel him put his hand on me, on my shoulder, and then he'd leave again. You know, when I'd come out, there'd be a meal there, and it was like that for months. The pain I was having was just absolutely excruciating. I went and seen my family doctor. He's looking at me like I'm 125 pounds. I look like a corpse. And he's looking at my medical record, and he's saying, you know, we might have to put you in the emergency room to bring you down. So he sends me to the hospital, and they send me back to him the next day. And I got to pick his jaw off the ground. He said it's like, he tested all my organs. He said it's like my body's never touched a drug in its life. I didn't even test positive for narcotics. And I didn't come down for 3 years. You would think it would almost all be drugs. And, no, everything was completely healed. And, but I got diagnosed with superimposed anxiety, depression, bipolar, PTSD, just a laundry list of things, mostly to do with my head. And I remember being at my dad's place, and I remember trying to figure out, I know Jesus saved me, but I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. Where do people go that love Jesus? They obviously go to church, but aren't there different denominations and stuff? How do I know what church to go to? And I remember I'm like, oh, wait, Akiana Kramerk. I'm like, what's she? Jesus taught her to paint. He clearly didn't take her, take her to the wrong church. And I Googled her, and she's a Christian. I'm like, okay, that means I'm a Christian. And I'm like, where do Christians go to church? I'm like, who else do I know that's Christian? And it turns out my uncle's a Christian. I'm like, where does he go to church when he's in town? And turns out he goes to the Black Diamond Gospel Chapel. So I go there, and I remember my first day in church, I come running to the front pew, front and center, and I'm holding my midsection, rocking back and forth, look like I'm barely able to breathe, just from how crazy I was. And pastor kind of stops, and he's looking at me, and he's stops what he's doing, and he keeps the service rolling though. And at the end of the service, I get up and I go running out, and he runs after me, and he chases me down, and he puts the Bible in my hands. And I remember when he put that book in my hands, I knew that everything written in that book was as good as gold, that it says perfect. And I took it home, and just shivering under my blankets, I started leafing through it. And as I'm reading through it, God really started talking to me through the words that leaped off the page to me. He also put it on my heart to start writing a book, so I said yes, and with a laptop that was broken, with no battery, with a missing R key, and I got no typing skills whatsoever. I started finger pecking my way to victory, shaking under my blanket, read my Bible, go back to typing, and I started doing that. He put it on my heart. I said yes. And then, as the weeks turned into months, I just leaned on God harder and harder and harder. He just kept revealing himself to me. I remember, and I haven't told anybody about this, but I remember I don't know why, but I was always looking for faces in the clouds. And it was the weirdest thing, because I would, my parents, I'd be driving with my parents, and I'd yelling at my dad to pull over, thinking I'd seen something with my camera out. And I don't know what it was, but I was always looking for faces. And I remember one day I get home, and my dad comes up to me, and this is after I almost crashed the vehicle trying to make them pull over. And my dad comes up to me, he's like, I don't know why, you're looking at faces, but you're looking for faces, but he's like, I want to show you something. And he brings me out onto the back deck, and we're on a big acreage looking at the mountains, and he points at the mountain that's closest to us, and in the mountain there's a massive face, and it's called Mount Head, and it's the giant face of a lion. You can see the mane, the paw, you can see the nose and the eyes and the mouth and everything. And it's like clear as day. And that was God revealing himself to me, like in such excruciating pain that just needed constant reassurance from God. And then all of a sudden, I had it anytime I could just get to the window and look outside. And that was just God. That was just one of the ways that he revealed himself to me. And he kept doing things like that. Yeah, and as the months kind of progressed on, my pastors asked me if I wanted to get baptized. And I said, yes, absolutely. I remember at my baptism, it was the first time I shared my testimony. And it was a pretty conservative church. And it was, they were all, pretty surprised. It was my first time sharing, so I wasn't very good at it. So I felt like I needed people to understand how bad it was. So, but afterwards, it was really good. Though afterwards, old couple comes up to me and they come up to me and they're like, you know what? Like today we chose to forego our usual church because our son is in our house. He's in the attic thinking the cops are raiding. He's on crystal meth, and this is the only time that he's been sleeping. So we came to this church because it's closest to our house, so we could get back before he wakes up.
Wow.
They're like, God brought us here to hear you. Can you talk to him? I said, yes, of course, yeah. And that was, the day I got baptized, God put, the first time he put someone in front of me. And I remember I met this guy, and he knew exactly who I was. I was very notorious that way. And so he knew exactly what it was. And I remember he was in such a bad state, like in psychosis, that he thought his parents had hired me to kill him. Because he knew who I was. Yeah, he's like a professional, dude, if you get something. So, and it's sad, though, because willingly walking off to his execution in his mind. But it paints a really clear picture of what it's like for a drug addict. Like he did that because he loves his family, but he's just, but he's in addiction. There's so much pain that comes with it. I know it better than anybody. But anyways, he comes with me. Like, he was crazy. Wanted me to meet his drug dealer. Just wouldn't stop talking about meth. I invited him. So he comes to my house for a detox, and he's doing all that stuff. And I was struggling at first. I'm like, I didn't know what to do. I was just knew that that's what God wanted me to do, is bring him to my house. I'm like, what do I do with this guy? I remember one day I'm driving home with him, and he wanted me to meet his drug dealer. And I'm like, and I got frustrated. And we got back to my house, and I got out of the car, and I said, look, man, I'm like you might need to go, die. You might, you might need to do even worse than that. You might have to go and stay alive. What's worse than death for an addict is staying alive, and having to come upstairs and look at your parents every single morning, knowing that you've been up all night doing drugs in the basement, and then knowing that they know that shame, that guilt, you know what I mean, just consuming you every single day. And, you might have to go through that. And he started crying. And I remember he goes downstairs, and I go upstairs, and I'm sitting with my parents, and I'm just, I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, I might have bit off more than I could chew with this, and something came over me. And in an instant, transforming moment, God gave me new eyes, I would say, to all of a sudden I seen that guy the way Jesus sees him. All of a sudden, I was looking at him through that lens. I just got filled with just this crazy love. And I got hyped up, right? And I'm telling my parents, I'm like, you know what? I'm like, let's go. We're not giving up on this guy. Let's get down there. And we go walking down there. And I sit with my dad, my mom, and me. We all sit down, and we just hug him. And we just shower him with love. Even my dad. And it was so cool. And after about 15 minutes, my parents go back upstairs. Me and him go back, and we're standing there looking at the sky and the mountains, and I'm telling him, I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen with you, man. I'm like, but make this your stand, man. You're doing everything good, but you're not doing the one thing that I told you. Out of everything, Jesus is the answer. Jesus is why I'm sober. Jesus did all the work. I didn't get saved in a church. He came to me. He came to me while I was on the floor with a knife in my wrist. And I'm like, you have to invite Jesus in. And he looks at me. It's the first time I'm seeing him. And just this light in his eyes. And he says, I was just praying that God to show me what love feels like. Darkness just turned to light in a split transforming moment for him. And I thought maybe I was special. Nope. It was awesome. God wants all of his lost sheep. The chains were broken off that guy, just like me, just in a transforming moment, just like that. He surrendered. And God met him right on that bed while he was crying right before me and my family came in, and the Spirit worked through me, and God's timing just worked perfectly. And I knew he was showing me with him that, I'm like, okay, now I know that, now I got to show everybody else how good this works, how good Jesus works. And my pastors asked me if I wanted to go to Bible college. I knew that was God's lead, so I went to Bible college. And again, they hadn't seen a lot of this around those. Around there. There were a bunch of homeschool prairie kids, sitting with Cody Bates, and then, but they were amazing. I grew so much while I was at Miller College of the Bible. It's amazing. And I remember God was showing me with my buddy that he wanted all his lost sheep. I'm like, how can I show everybody how good this works, how good Jesus works? And that's when I thought about going, I'm like, okay, where, if people get saved, most will grab the most attention from everybody else. And East Hastings came to my heart. And I remember East Hastings, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's the poorest postal code in Canada, the highest rate of drugs, crime, prostitution, and poverty just ravages the downtown east side Vancouver. And the devil's just got a heavy grasp there. And I remember going, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to Hastings. And then, and I knew God was leading my heart. I hadn't been home for Christmas in years, but I knew that that's where God was asking me to go. So I said yes, Sheila. and I went down there. And I remember I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just standing on the corner of East Hastings in Maine with a box of 400 Bibles in my backpack. Looking around, and everybody's out of their minds, tents everywhere. And I'm like, what the heck? And I'm like, okay, we could do this. And I just started walking. I really reeled in what I was capable of doing. I remember like the months leading up to it, I'm like, okay. I'm like, if I save like 25% of Hastings, that'll be awesome. Like, no. You know what? As human beings, all we can do is plant seeds. I can't save anybody. It has to be God. It's got to be Jesus. All I can do as a human being is plant seeds. So that's what I did when I was down there. I started planting seeds, and I really thought about how can I get influence with these people. Like that's what you need. Once you got influence with somebody, that's when you can get them into treatment or get them help. So how do you get influence with someone? How did Jesus get influence with us? And I really thought about it. I'm like, okay, so Jesus was the greatest evangelist in the world, and when he stepped onto this planet 2,000 years ago, things got real personal real quick, and he washed the feet of his disciples. There's a big difference between empathy and compassion. Compassion's like if you're walking by someone on the street and you give them a sandwich and you say, I hope you get off the street and, I'll be praying for you. Like, that's compassion. Empathy's different. Empathy requires us to sit down with that person, to put their shoes on, to live it with them, to feel it with them. And when we exhibit that level of sacrifice, it opens up a new dimension for relationship and connection because it's an expression of unconditional love. When I was down on Hastings, everyone there knew that I had other places I could be. But I was there with them on Christmas. And you know what? And it just opened up this crazy dimension of relationship and connection. I connected with so many people down there. The first guy I talked to was the guy that I ended up bringing out of there with me. A week before I got there, he had his face in the mud in Pigeon Park asking God to help him. And a week later, I come walking by with a box of Bibles. Wow. and I, start talking with this guy. And this guy's my best friend in the world today. I work out with him every day. His name's Carl. He lives in Kelowna.
Now Carl is the guy, by the way, you got to tell the little story of the Bowie knife.
Yeah. When I was walking by, he's the first person I talked to. And I'm walking by him, and he's got this big knife in his hand. He's hacking away at a piece of wood, a big Bowie knife. and I don't know what it was. So I'm like walking by him, and it's like 10 at night, and it's Hastings. I'm looking at him. I'm like, this guy will do it. Like, I don't know what it was. It was the way he looked at me. He'd be open to talk. And I just started talking with him, and him and I go walking into this. He takes me to a skate park down there, which is like really dark and like secluded away from everything. Down on East Hastings, it was freaky. And I was like walking with him, like, yeah, I did time for homicide, just letting you know. It's like I got a big knife. Like, yeah. But we sat down, and I shared my testimony with him. I bought him some food, and he didn't. And it's funny. He's like, why are you doing this? He's like, I'm not gay. I'm like, no, I don't know what it is. I don't know, man. I'm not gay either. I'm doing this because I love Jesus. And he gave his life to Christ while I'm sitting there with him.
Wow.
And he's the guy that brought out of there. And I ended up talking to like 600 or 700 people over a 10-day span where it's just pounding pavement, sitting with guys. I got creative, man. Like, there was one guy, I'm like, I'll buy you a tent if you have a Bible study in it with me. And he's like, yeah, he did it. And then and I just did different things just to try and gain influence with people. And that's what I did. And it was very profound. It's very impactful. It was the most profound 10 days of my life. It was awesome. After that, just all these doors opened up. That's how the Huntley interview came. I was on the front page of the Calgary Herald. Glory to God in front page secular news. They're talking about Jesus and the Bible, and like every person I've ever talked to is like, I've never seen that anywhere. And because of that article, I got invited on 100 Huntley Street and another show called This Is Your Story. I got connections to get my book published. I got that from the article, because I said yes to Hastings, because I was obedient to that call. So many blessings just came from just saying yes to Hastings. I work with Teen Challenge in the Okanagan. It's crazy. I was getting asked to speak everywhere, and I was going to different places, and lots of places was trying to get me to work with them, and I kept rejecting all the offers and stuff because it wasn't Jesus, it was 12 steps, or it was, but I wanted to talk about Jesus. I wanted to talk about the truth. I wanted to talk about the gospel. That's me, man.
Yes.
And I don't care about money anymore. I lost my passion for money. I just want to share the good news with people, and where can I do that? And Teen Challenge asked me if I come and speak there, and I go there, and then they give me a tour around the property. They show me the curriculum they do, everything, and I begged Teen Challenge to let me work with them. I'm like, please, you guys have to let me in on this. They're just they are drinking out of a fire hydrant of truth.
Yeah.
Teen Challenge.
Yes.
It's all Jesus, man. And so the Okanagan Men's Center hired me on, and they hired me because I'm an evangelist. So I assemble teams now. So I'm doing a street ministry, and I called it Every Life Counts. Yeah, so we all go into Kelowna every Thursday night at 6:00 in front of the Gospel Mission, and we just love on the community down there. And I assemble teams, and I teach everybody how to be the hands and feet of Jesus, man. Evangelism was the catalyst to my spiritual life and my spiritual growth. I loved Bible college, but I was going insane in Bible college. That's half the reason I went to Hastings. I needed action, man. I needed to get into there. And you know what? And I'm so excited to see where God is growing Teen Challenge. I'm so excited to see where God is growing me. And I just try to keep being obedient. I try and just stay as humble as possible and just keep making it about Him, because I'm not standing here because of anything I did. It was all Jesus.
Just such an incredible story, and I think that is so profound what you just said. I am not standing here anything to do with me. It's all Jesus. Yeah. That is really, it's such a profound story, and it's amazing what Jesus can do. And I think that's really where the passion for evangelism comes in with you, Cody, because, you can't not talk about what Jesus did in your life, because it is such a profound thing. So it's really exciting. No. I mean, what God is doing with your life now, the calling that you have, and just taking you places. I mean, and by the way, just so folks know, East Hastings, this place is, not many people go to East Hastings. It's like you totally downplayed it, but this place is it makes the ghetto look like Wall Street. It is really. Yeah.
It's you know what, the devil really has his grips on Hastings.
Yeah.
But you know what? This year, for the second annual Christmas on Hastings project, so I'm going back.
Oh.
Guess what? Carl's coming with me. And so, it comes to, everything. God's bringing this to full circle, man. Carl's going back to the streets that he came from. I'm partnering with the Carroll Street Gospel Mission Street Chapel down there.
Yeah.
And they're letting me use their church for 10 days.
Wow.
So I'm going to be putting on events down there. I'm going to be bringing in barbers to cut hair, get everybody looking good, feeling good, for job interviews, Christmas. There's going to be music playing. We're going to be feeding people. I'm handing out posters to different businesses to get clothing donations.
Wow.
You know what? Last year I was going down there by myself to bring attention to it. So that way this year I could go down with plugs and resources to pull people out of there and make a larger scale impact this year. So that's the plan. Carl's coming with me. And yeah, man, we're just going to go and just be the hands and feet of Jesus for 10 days. And it's going to be awesome.
Wow, it sounds like it is going to be awesome. I'm just so excited for what God is doing in your life, Cody, because your testimony, again, it is just remarkable. There is people that are suffering from such demonic affliction through drugs. Drugs have an incredible grip on many people. They are just absolutely afflicted with this torment, the pain, the agony, wanting to die, trying to die. You're certainly no stranger to that. Such a powerful testimony of someone who overcame all that by nothing more than the grace of Jesus Christ. The power of God is certainly evident in your life. Now, Cody, in the waning moments, for folks that want to invite you to speak at their church or invite you to talk to their youth, I want you to give out your information, your website, and talk a little bit about this exciting book that's coming out at the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the easiest way would go to my website, codybates.com. I'm also on social media under Cody Bates. You can follow me there. Instagram, Cody Bates. You can follow me there. And yeah, the book that's coming out on December 15th called The Devil's Pupil, A True Story of Redemption. I want Christians to be encouraged from it, but Mark 2:17 says it's not the healthy you need a doctor, but the sick. I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners. And that's where God has really put my heart. My heart beats for the lost. That's the heart God gave me. So my book is really meant to penetrate into the secular world. God was showing me when I was on the front page of the Calgary Herald, glory to God, and front page news, God was showing me with that he wants to use my story to really impact, a lost world. I'm hoping, people are going to read my story. They want to know what happened. I was in jail for homicide. I was in a very dangerous prison. I was a big drug dealer, this and that. And then at the end of the book, they're going to be receiving the message of Christ. And then we'll be talking about evangelism, what I'm doing now. And then at the end of the book, there will be a prayer for people to give their life to Christ. Wow. and different ways they could plug in and different resources. And yeah, and you know what? And honestly, Sheila, I try and talk to every single person that messages me. John 3:30, we must decrease so he can increase. I really want to, I know God wants all of his lost sheep. So if there's anything I can do to help people, I'll be doing it.
Amen. Well, Cody, thank you so much for taking your time out of your really busy schedule to come on the program to share your incredibly impactful story. The book, folks, be watching for that in December. Just such a powerful testimony. Of course, he didn't get into all of it, but it is just so incredible. I had the privilege of meeting Cody, spending some time with him. His personality is just infectious. Boy, the love of God just pours out of him. You can see, even with his laugh, I think he's got like an anointed laugh, literally. He's just so full of joy and love for people. Cody, I was just so impressed with you sharing with the youth and how they respond to you is so powerful. You're just a light for Jesus Christ in a really dark world, especially what is going on with our youth in this time we live. I want to thank you for your ministry, and I want to thank you so much, Cody, for coming on the program today. Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I just really, it's, I just hope that everyone's just super encouraged. If I could say one more thing for people that have loved ones that are in addiction, I know there's going to be lots listening to this. Don't stop praying. God's timing is still working perfectly for them. You have to have trust in that. You have to have faith. I didn't get saved in a church or at an altar. I got saved with a knife in my wrist on my bedroom floor when I didn't even know who Jesus was. So keep praying. God gave us power in our words. Just have comfort, rejoice that his timing is still working perfectly for absolutely everybody. So just keep praying for them and don't give up because God is big.
Yeah, we do serve a big God, don't we?
Yeah, we certainly do. The biggest.
I just love this guy's laugh. Thank you so much for coming on the program today, Cody. What an absolute blessing. I've also got Cody's information linked below in the description. Do reach out to him and let him know you heard him on the program today. Thank you very much again, Cody. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Sheila. I'm looking forward to connecting with you again. And yeah, God bless you so much.
Thanks, Cody. Folks, that was Cody Bates, CODYBATES.com. His information, like I said, is linked in the description below. Reach out to Cody. And if you're a minister, reach out to Cody and invite him to speak to your youth groups. If you have any type of ministry that deal with young men, do reach out to Cody, and I'm sure he would love to come and speak to your youth. He's a very impactful young man. We'll certainly be keeping our eye out for him. And speaking of awesome, young, powerful men, there's another fella that I met, and I got to tell you something. Boy, oh boy, what a talent. And wow, is God ever using this fella too? It's remarkable. His name is Fresh IE, and I'm going to be uploading that show that I did with him, a remarkable First Nations fellow that God is using in a powerful way. He's a Canadian First Nations, and he was nominated for a Grammy. And what a powerful testimony as well. So be watching for that over the weekend. Make sure you are subscribed to my YouTube channel. All the information, even on how you can get the book, Power Prayers, Warfare That Works, and it works. This is an arsenal that you need to get. Cody mentioned prayer. Don't give up on these folks that are in bondage right now. Yeah, they might be bound up, but guess what? God works through the prayers of his people. So get that book, Power Prayers, and do follow me on social media and subscribe to my YouTube channel. All that information is simply on the front page there at www.sheila.media. Be watching for that interview with Fresh IE. Very powerful stuff. Thanks so much for tuning into the broadcast. We'll see you real soon. Good night, and God bless.